Welcome to the Curve, where ideas take flight, blending tech and teaching.
All right, welcome to the Learning Curve. My name is Carl Moen, Digital Learning Specialist at Region 7. Alongside me is Benjamin Wood, Coordinator of Digital Learning, and we have a special guest with us today that we are interviewing. Ms. Parker, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Danieli Parker. I am Director of Innovation and Instructional Technology for Hallsville Independent School District.
And so this is one of the things we really want to do is interview people in the field, interview you, because we value your experience and we think that your districts are doing great things. And so this is just the first and hopefully a long line of conversations that we get to have with you. And so, Danieli, we're so excited to get to talk to you today. We're excited about the things that are happening in Hallsville. And so why don't you just really quickly kick it off with what's going on right now? What are some initiatives that you're working toward, or maybe haven't happened yet, but that you'd like to see happen?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to kind of just sit and chat with you both and share about the things going on in our district. One of our big things as a district is we want to prepare our students for life after high school, right? And so we want them to be prepared to go compete at this global society that they're going to be living in. And as we all know, technology has evolved so much. Our goal is to help our students become digital citizens, good digital citizens. Like, we want them to make good choices with technology, but we also want to equip them with tools and problem-solving ways to embrace new learning. And as the three of us know, even back from when we were in elementary school to what is now out there, like, we've had to learn a lot as adults because technology has evolved so much. And our kids, what they're going to experience in the next 30, 40 years is going to be mind-blowing to us, right? And so our goal here in our district is to prepare them for that. So, how to use technology appropriately. Digital citizenship has been a big thing in ours. We don't want cyberbullying. We don't want kids using technology in the wrong way or using AI in the wrong way. So we're really doing a lot on digital citizenship. Has been a big thing that we've really pushed. And then how can we use technology not as a substitute teacher, but to enhance and support student learning in the classroom? And so really helping our teachers understand what kind of blended learning really is, and making sure that we're not just depending on technology to do the teaching, but how can we use it as a tool to support student learning? So those have been some big things that we've been really hitting. And then as a district, we really embraced AI. For our staff to use. Really, I would say for about a year and a half now. We have really embraced it, and we've really worked with our teachers on how to help students learn how to use AI in a responsible manner. So that's been a hot topic, especially at secondary English language arts. But you know what? I've got some English language arts teachers that are embracing it, and they're starting to utilize those tools or utilize thinking outside the box of how to support students in their learning with that. And so those have been some of our big things, is we want to teach kids how to use it responsibly, how to use it correctly, and again, truly never lose the magic of the conversations and collaborations in classrooms, but how can we use it as a tool to assist?
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
Great. That's amazing. You said some things in there that I'm really excited to kind of unpack a little bit. Can you kind of walk us through a little bit of those first interactions when y'all were having the discussions at the district level and bringing it to the teachers, pulling them into the conversations about AI usage? Like, what were some of those initial conversations like from teachers' perspective, administration perspective, those kind of things?
So really for us, I dove in 2 summers ago and really started, talk to me more about this AI world. So I spent my summer really diving into AI and what are some tools. And it's really kind of funny. I didn't do my first AI training really with anybody at district. I really just jumped in with teachers, and it was with the special ed staff.
Okay.
Because in a program called Magic School AI, there is a whole IEP generator, a BIP generator, social stories, right? And so our special ed staff is working really, really hard. And when you think about the amount of paperwork that they're dealing with, how can we ensure that we're really hitting everything? How do we phrase things in a way that, as a former administrator, I know there were times when I was doing evaluations, I felt like I was saying the same thing over again. And you're like, how can I say this differently? AI helps us with that now. So I actually started it off with the special ed department and with special ed staff, and I'd started off with the LSSPs and DIACs. They were ecstatic. They said, "What is this? Like, please!" And they got on board. Then they started telling special ed teachers on campuses about it. So then I went to campuses and I started. They really helped kind of start launching that. And then throughout the year last year, I would share, I do monthly tech challenges. And so in there, I integrated podcasts about AI. And I would make sure to find podcasts that had teacher fears and what were they doing to overcome those fears. So addressing the elephant in the room of, about students cheating and about things. I would share articles. I would make sure to integrate information about AI into those, and then even in some of the challenges, I had them go use the AI tools and how can this help you. And then at district level, last fall, I introduced to administrators AI tools to help them. So in Magic School and at Eduate, there's ways to reword things, right? There's ways to, you can plug in your sentences and have it, make it sound more professional, or make it sound, a little bit not as harsh, like, whatever it is. And so I started doing small group trainings like that, tailoring for whatever audience I was with based on their needs. So secretaries, I showed them how to help them rewrite, because sometimes when they would draft an email out to staff would take it in a negative way. We're all human, so we just kind of let our emotions go through sometimes. So I taught them how to use those tools. So everybody got to see how it applied to their role, and then how it could help benefit their work life. And so when you actually get to see those things, it kind of eases some fears, because I think when people think of AI, they think of ChatGPT, and I've got to come up with all these prompts, and I don't know what prompts to use. So I went and found resources that are out there that take that stress away, but let's use the good parts that are going to help us do our work. And then I started filtering to grade level teams. Here's a way to help you unpack your standards. Here's one that's a great way to help you come up with an extension. And really start showing them different tools. And it wasn't mandatory, like you must go use these things, but people got excited and they started going in and they started using things. And so again, there's some people that still aren't very comfortable with it, and then there are others that love using it frequently.
Well, I love your approach with that. I think the way that you rolled that out is key. I think, just like you said, had it been a mandate coming down from the mountain, that would have been and received in a different way. But you meeting them where they are and when they need and how they need is huge. I think too that and we've talked about this a lot of times. That notion of trepidation with the idea of, well, what is AI? If they've never seen or experienced AI, there's a whole lot of concern, and there's a whole lot of things that are pulled into that conversation that really aren't really pertinent always to that. And so showing them how it can benefit them, I think really alleviates a lot of the issues and pressures with that.
And I think we can't just stick our head in the sand and ignore fears.
Right.
We have to be willing to have those conversations.
Yeah.
What are the fears around this? What are your worries? And have conversations about that. But then, okay, so how, any new tech tool can be used for wrong. When the internet came out, there was a lot of fear behind that as well. And now people wouldn't know how to function without the internet. And so anytime you have a new tool, there's always going to be fear. And I think as good stewards and as leaders, we have to acknowledge those fears and have conversations around those fears. But then how do we move past those fears? How can I support you and work with you to help you get past that? So again, writing prompts is very scary for people. That's not what they're used to.
Right.
I think our kids are going to get very comfortable with that, and that's going to be a huge job market. It already is becoming a big job market, so we can't just stick our head in the sand and say that's not important. It is important.
And it's great practice for short constructive response.
Absolutely.
That prompt is a short constructive response.
Like,
in a lot of ways.
It's the way we look at it
thinking
and think about it. What are good questions? As good teachers, we would ask kids when we would do a read aloud, what are questions you have? What would you want more information about? Like, I would want to know more about, why Neil Armstrong chose to be an astronaut. What kind of school did he go to? Now, those are all prompts. Like, you can ask those kind of prompts. You can research those prompts. Like, there's different ways we can start doing those. So embracing that, but then giving them tools. If that's your fear, here's a resource that already gives you the prompt frame. You just plug in the information in the blanks, and it's already generated the prompt for you. So let's not let it limit us, our fear. Let's meet our staff where they're at, because there's some of my staff here that will write prompts and can prompt away and have no fears, whereas others want that strict frame.
Right.
And I don't want to ask it wrong.
Right. And I think that's a great way to think about things too, because if we'll model these things for our students and even model the struggle that we're going through, I think that's so valuable for our students to see that hey, this was a learning curve for me as well, and now maybe I'm not great at it yet, but I'm comfortable at least with it. And then I think anything that we can do that stirs the curiosity of our students, where they start asking questions like, why would Neil Armstrong be an astronaut? What a great question to ask, And I don't know the answer to that. Let's go find out. And I think that's a wonderful way to stir that curiosity. Anything we can do to help our students become better questioners is preparing them for exactly what you said, life beyond high school.
Well, I think it's going to help them as well. So I remember, I won't speak for y'all, but I remember a lot of my schooling was around memorization
Yes.
and regurgitating, right?
Yeah.
Like it was memorizing facts or whatever. Now, because of AI, our kids are going to have to become really great detectives in really taking information and not taking it at face value, but having to really analyze it and evaluate it and then go compare resources to see, is this valid? So if I ask AI information about Neil Armstrong, then what sources am I going to go and verify that that's actually accurate? If it tells me he went to this university, okay, now my job is to go prove it.
Yes.
So not only like people fear, well, AI is just going to do the work. No, have them generate off AI, but now teach them how to evaluate and go research and now verify.
Yeah, exactly.
That's something we talk about all the time, the whole idea of discernment. I think with AI, with all the great things it's brought into the realm of education and what it means for our students, the one thing it's really forcing all of us to reevaluate is, how do we teach discernment? What level of discernment does a elementary student need to know? What level of discernment does a high school student need to know? What level of discernment does an adult need to know? And I think that's the big thing. And I think the good thing about that, kind of what y'all both just mentioned, is if we focus on teaching them higher levels of discernment, we also have higher levels of critical thinking, we have higher levels of question order and all these things that will generate that. But that's the hard thing with that, is there's not a TEK out there that says teach discernment in third grade. There's no checkbox for that, and there's not really even an easy guide to teach discernment. But you just mentioned several great examples of how we can integrate learning to teach a better, higher level of discernment within the classroom. So
Because research begins in kindergarten.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Research begins there. So, if we're going to ask AI questions about tigers, and we're talking about ecosystems even in kindergarten, what are some books we can give them and say, okay, find a book that tells me about where tigers live when you read. And so through your research, we're going to now see, did they tell us the truth? Was that a fact, or was that opinion, or was that just entertainment that they, we can tie it in. It's just thinking outside of the box of our standards. And we're going to have to really push ourselves to just think outside the box.
I think that's an interesting point right there, is that our standards, although that's what's required of us to teach, they really should serve almost as a starting point where this is the minimum, right? And we can absolutely go beyond this. And just because we've met the standard doesn't mean that we've necessarily prepared our students for where they need to be. But that's where this exploration and research and curiosity can take us, where we start at the standard, and we absolutely do that. Hear me say that. We absolutely do the standard. But we use that as a jumping off point to really explore beyond what the standard even has.
Well, I think of third grade. So as a campus principal, and then even when I was a classroom teacher, third grade, we always did a wax museum. So we would look at our social studies standards and see all the famous people, right? Because there's a ton. And so how do you teach all that while you're teaching everything else? So our kids would get to choose their person, they would get to research. Well, now you can integrate the character chat bot with that. So you research it, and you can go, and then you do your research, then you ask chatbot all these questions, and then where in your research did you verify that this was factual that they wrote, or what was wrong? And you've done your research, but then you've also interacted with AI, and now you've done some verifying of information. And so it's thinking outside the box.
That's really good. That's good. All right, we're going to shift gears just a little bit here, staying in the world of the technology and innovation, because you're the director of innovation. And we were kind of talking before we even started. First of all, what does that mean, director of innovation? We just think about job, because that's what a huge responsibility. And then secondly, what advice would you offer or give to people who are maybe in a position that's similar to yours, and just as we explore, what does it look like to be innovative in education? What does it look like to really bring technology into the learning space? We've been talking about AI. If we explored all of the opportunities out there for technology, what would you say? How would you kind of introduce that to people? That's a big question.
Big
It's like
question.
9
Yes,
parts.
there was.
Sorry.
Okay, so first, Director of Innovation. So I think that a lot of districts have different roles and they call them different things, and people just, they're like, what do you do, right? And so I think one of the most important things is, like, so for my district, we have a director of technology, and then there's myself. So really clearly understanding what is, like, their roles. So I always tell people, like, I can probably help you restart your computer. I can check to make sure that it's plugged in. But if it's anything technical past that, I am not your girl. Like, that is the technology department.
Right.
Like, they're going to help you set up. They're going to help, like, problem solve your devices. That is definitely not my realm. So really clearly communicating between you, if you have another tech director, what is their role and what is your role?
Right.
Like, where's that responsibility? And then there's always going to be blurs.
Right.
And like I said, there's been times where people are like, I know you don't fix things, but can you see if you can fix? And there's times that I can do it. I'm like, oh, I got that. Like, like the guys taught me this. Like, I can fix this. But we're going to work together, but having a clear understanding. Because some places may not have that. So somebody in that role may have to help with that. They may have to do a lot of the syncing of staff to programs and stuff. I'm fortunate. I don't really have to do that. They've taught me how, in case I'm sitting in a collaborative meeting with teachers, like, I can go in and add somebody and roster. I know the basics. But for my role in our district is really supporting instruction. It's about instruction. And then how do we use technology or other innovative ideas to help our students learn the standards, learn what we're supposed to be teaching. So, sometimes it's not innovative. Sometimes it's going back to just best practices. So sometimes it's about studying the standard. Like, how do we do that? How do we have those kind of conversations in team meetings? I think sometimes when people hear innovation, they think, oh, it has to always be these new ideas. No, it's teaching people how to utilize the tools that they already have sometimes. And then maybe it is starting to find. So the exact example was AI. No one said, hey, Danieli, go start researching AI. I started hearing the buzz in the tech world, reading articles, and I was like, I've got to get on this because this is coming, and I've got to start learning more about this so I can help answer questions. I can help lead this out. And so sometimes it's being very self-directed. I'm constantly reading articles. I'm on lots of newsletters from different national organizations and state organizations, constantly reading and being like, oh my gosh, that is perfect for social studies. That is, constantly looking for those tidbits and support for, for me, it's pre-K through 12th grade. So what are things that are helpful for them? And so it's kind of like I get to be like a little discoverer that's going out and exploring things, and then I go to collaborative team meetings. I go to meet with administrators, and I hear, like, what are the needs, what are the struggles, and then what are either like old practices we need to go back and revisit, or what are some other ideas, or what are tools we already have that can support that learning. I think sometimes people, when they get into these roles, they think, I've got to constantly be sending out new information all the time. Like, like I've got to send out these weekly, like, here's this app and here's this app. Like, for our staff, if I did that, that would overwhelm them. And they would start deleting. If they saw my name, they'd be like, delete, 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 delete. So, one of my big pieces of advice is get to know kind of what your staff needs are. Like, how do they best learn? And then, more isn't always best. Sometimes focusing on a few things is more beneficial than focusing on, I call it kind of like my analogy is like, splatter painting. There's splatter painting places that you can go and you can just splatter paint, right? You're just flinging paint anywhere. But then there's also paint by numbers. And so, if I go in with technology and innovation and do splatter painting, I might be lucky if I hit a couple people, or am I just hitting dead space? Whereas I really want to do paint by numbers. I want to be very intentional in hitting where I'm going to hit. And so I think sometimes people that are starting these roles, they get really excited, which is good. You don't want to lose that excitement, but then it becomes overwhelming, and people
For both
shut
them
down.
and their people.
Yes, because they're burning themselves out thinking I'm always having to find something new every week. And no, sometimes, I mean, I did a tech challenge recently, and I said, what are some things you want to learn about? And somebody was like, we want to learn more about keyboard shortcuts. I'm like, okay, so next tech challenge, I got keyboard shortcuts for them. So sometimes things that other people find innovative, maybe things I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
I've known about that for about 15 years, but that is okay because that's where they're at. So
But you made
innovation
the pathway,
isn't, innovation isn't always about your own innovation
Right.
and pushing yourself, but it's innovating others. So it may be something you learned 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but to that person, it is innovative because it's not something they knew
That's
how to
good.
do.
But I think you hit on something key there, though, that you do. You create the pathways in which they're able to advocate for themselves of what they might need, so that you can tailor it to them. And I think sometimes that is a step that can be missed in the process, and that excitement of, or that pressure that someone may feel of, well, I've got to have a new tech tip every week. I got to have that ready. I got my potty PD all set up and going. We've got to remember too. We need to be cognizant and aware of what our end users need and what our teachers need or are looking for. So how can you talk a little or elaborate a little bit more about that process? Like, is that an informal process? Do you send out a survey? Do you just communicate with them on what they might need?
Yeah, so a lot of the time it's just in my tech challenge. I just have a basic Google form that is a reflection, and sometimes I'll just say, hey, what is something you want to learn more about? And I may not send it out every month, but like maybe a couple times a year. And then based off that feedback, then I'm like, okay, then I know I'm going to hit in these next couple of months. And so just giving that opportunity. And sometimes, again, it's being present. So,
Right.
I'm in the district leadership team meetings. I go and I meet with the campus administrators. Like, I'll go pop in and check with different people that I know that will be honest with me across our district. Like, what do y'all need now? Like, what's like a burning question that's going on? And then utilize that.
You're the only one of you. You don't have.
Yeah,
you
no,
have a
there's
team?
me. No.
Okay.
No, the library media specialists,
Right.
We've really worked on helping build them up too and help, I'm like, you are on the campus all the time. So really
Right.
trying to have, solicit their support in it as well is big.
That's good too.
And so you have to find your people to help kind of bridge that as well.
Were you the first? And this isn't that important, but were you the first one in this role, or has the role been established before?
So for this specific role, this was the first time.
Okay.
This role, we did have instructional technology,
Right.
Teachers, several years before state funding got changed.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
We did lose quite a few positions, and the instructional technologists, unfortunately, were a piece that were cut at that time. And they were more teachers that would make things for teachers a lot of the times. They would sometimes train, but it became a lot of, hey, can you just make me this? Can you make me this? And that is, I think, a pothole that people that are in this role need to be very aware of.
Absolutely.
I don't view myself, I don't mind making something for you, but I'm going to teach you while I make it because you have to be able to sustain this. And so that's a big thing is, so we did have people at that time that did those things, but then that was cut. And so for this director position, that was new.
Okay.
So going along this lines, what if you could go back in time and tell yourself, so like 3 things, something like that, what would you tell yourself in your experiences in education? Looking back with all that you've done and what you're doing now, what would you tell yourself at the start of your career in education?
Oh my gosh, like when I first started teaching?
Yeah. If you could go back and talk to yourself.
Take a deep breath.
I know. Take a deep breath. Yeah, I understand.
It's going to be okay. You'll still love your job later. Okay, so I've always loved technology. And so I would tell myself, never stop learning, and that's going to be a strength later. You don't feel like it's a big deal, a strength right now, but it is a strength because when I first started teaching, I loved technology. It was just what I did. I just used it all the time. And so just reassuring myself, keep pushing yourself there. I feel like I didn't really push myself. Now I'm like, man, I wish I had done this. I had wanted to do this and I didn't because I was scared. Do it.
Yeah.
try it. It's okay. I was one of those, like, I wanted to, like, everything to be perfect. Like, I didn't want to, like, the perfectionist. Let it go and just try it, and it's going to be okay. The kids will be fine. And it was so hard. And, I think that probably happened after I became a mom. Like, let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go. It's not going to be perfect. My son taught me that, my very first child. He was a great kid, but, like, he really taught me that. And so I wish I could go back to my first year teacher and be like, just let it go. It's okay if it doesn't look perfect. It's okay if your room doesn't look perfect.
Right.
And I did. Like, I was doing claymations back when I first started, and I literally with the camera, and we were taking still shots, and I was teaching the kids how to dump them in PowerPoint and set the timers and how to make this whole claymation videos. And I'm like, do more of that.
Yeah.
Like, they were learning, and there was great learning, but I was so scared of the test and, and the worksheets that had to be done. Like, that innovation, like, was good teaching.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So step into your futurist self now. All right, so we've had you go back to the past.
Now
we're looking at the future. So 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, where is education going? Like, if you could predict, or if you had something that you would just love to see, where's education going in the future?
Not popular belief. I would love to see, like, get rid of student desks.
Okay.
Like, I would love to see collaboration stations. Like, that's the way classrooms are designed, is collaboration rooms and not these student desks. We've seen student desks evolve, but,
They're still desks.
The
They're still students.
is independent desks.
Yes, but, like, more collaboration learning centers where kids are doing hands-on real-life application things. Like, and again, I was an elementary principal, so I know those foundational skills have to be taught.
Right.
But if you, like, when I think back to my campus, there was collaboration happening in those kindergarten. Like, we had flex seating in there, and it was like, why does it die there? Like, it's like, oh, they can only do that in kindergarten, they can only do that in pre-K, or just elementary. Like, no, they can do that all the way through. And if you look at the job world, the market now, it is around collaboration, and it is different types of learning environments. There are people that thrive working from home in Zoom in isolation. There are people that absolutely thrive on that. There are other people that thrive in collaboration settings. And so really, like, changing the way our schools look to, if you work better in isolation, then you work on that by yourself. If you work better in collaboration, then here's your learning project. So, really offering different types of checking students' learning away from just, standardized assessments.
Yeah.
And I think we're working on that, but I think it's still a long road, and unfortunately, as long as we have state assessments the way they are, like, I think it's going to continue to force us to have to make sure that our kids know how to do those types of things.
Yeah.
Just the reality.
Yeah.
But I would love for it to be more around hands-on learning. I think it's a shame that home ec has left.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Hands-on learning. Like, that's hands-on learning that kids do. That's problem solving. That's math. But we're so worried again about making sure we've got all these standards and that we're meeting these timelines. Like, some of those things have left, which is life skills.
Yeah.
Our kids have to know how to do. So again, it's, you hear me talk about innovation, you're like, cooking skills, but we have to find a balance.
I took my senior year of high school. I had to have another class, and I took a food science and nutrition class. It was awesome. It was so great because
and it's formative to who you became. Like,
absolutely,
knowing your interests, like that is like
it really is, because it was just so fun, and I cooked growing up with my mom and stuff. But still, this was just so fun to do. I'm like, man, I'm gonna cook in school. And I'm not bringing my lunch today. Well, I'm gonna eat in class, And so it was. I loved it, and I think that's great. And I think that you're right that we've lost something when we take learning out of the hands of the students and put it into prescribed kinds of, this is what you have to know, and I understand that to a degree, but at the same time, I think that you miss some of the real soul of what learning is supposed to be, and its exploration and having developing some of these skills and as well as that collaboration. I think that's really valuable.
Carl and I, we were really fortunate, and I'm a recovering CTE teacher. Carl is a recovering humanities teacher. We were both lucky enough to do project-based learning and blended learning, bringing in those collaborative spaces and just seeing high school students thrive in that.
Absolutely.
It was truly affirming of what was happening in the classroom, to see that happen and see your kids take ownership in their learning and be involved and motivated outside of some arbitrary grade. I mean, truly, grades are important. They hold
we're saying some scandalous
yes,
things, right?
yes, I know. Yeah. That's important. We need to make sure and understand that grades are important to a degree. But just seeing the kids just pure curiosity drive their learning, is just phenomenal. And with that,
it was fun as teachers.
Yeah.
It was just fun.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was.
Enjoy it. And I love the fact you brought up CTE because that's exactly one of the things I think about. Like, kids get really excited about CTE courses because it's a passion.
Yeah.
Like, if you love photography and you're getting to go do that during the day, like, that's a highlight.
Absolutely.
And so you've got that from secondary and you can go all the way down. If you're into dinosaurs, which a lot of little boys are, like, think how cool it would be if you were able to craft your instructional week around dinosaurs, or not saying not by unit, but like kids that were interested in dinosaurs, you're going to we're going to tie it around dinosaurs and exploration, measurement,
you can
time,
learn math,
problem solving,
yeah.
habitat, like you can animal adaptations, like all these things you can incorporate. If you like animals, I have an animal room, and kids that want to go and dive into animals. Like, if you like cooking, then dive into cooking, and we can tie in our standards into these things. But one of the big things I saw as administrator is that discipline happened when kids were not engaged, or it was over topics they didn't understand, or they didn't have background knowledge in. And so, how can we make that more exciting to our kids while still reaching their standards? And that's the cool thing about innovation.
I was going to say, I think that you just hit right there on the idea of innovation. We can still bring our standards into whatever it is that we want to talk about.
But
That's
the
awesome.
fear is,
that's really cool.
and this is going to continue to be, is the fear of, well, that's not what we've always done.
Yeah.
It's not the way when we've taught that unit in the past. And so one of the things I encourage people is, forget the unit, let's look at the standard.
Yeah.
Now let's get to be creative. We went into education because we love to be creative. Let's be creative and let's find fun and engaging ways to teach our kids these standards. The unit, whatever unit title it is, doesn't drive the learning. It's the standards within that unit. And so it's like we've married ourselves to these units, which is fine. I understand we're going to group them, right? We're a teach resource district, so we've got our units. But what are the standards? What's the essential learning? And then we get to decide how we deliver that.
Yeah.
So if we're a boy-heavy teacher, find out their interests and let's make activities that go along that. Let's find texts that go along that. Be okay with trying something. But I know it's hard. It does take time, but I think teachers that have really found where students drive their learning have said to me, this is so much easier because the kids are facilitating the learning. Like, they're doing the learning, I'm just facilitating the learning. And I'm like, who's doing the work? No, they are. I was like, absolutely. You pull some books, give it their library and say, this is a topic we're covering, have them pull books, put them out and say, find something, you pick, and giving them that voice and choice. But again, it's letting go of that control.
Yeah.
It's not what we've always done. And then just allowing yourself permission to try something. And that's where, as administrators, as a former administrator, if my teacher we want to try something different, I was like, go for it. But what if it fails? I'm like, okay, well, we'll talk about it.
Right.
We'll try something different next time.
Right.
So you have to, as administrators, we also have to give our staff permission in a way to be innovative themselves and encourage it. And say, hey, you know what? I know that didn't go the way you wanted, Carl, but I'm so proud of you for at least trying it.
Yeah.
There were some great conversations in there. What would you do different next time?
Right.
And encourage that to keep going.
And that becomes a partnership between you and your teachers at that point. And when there's a real partnership, there's vulnerability that comes along with that. Where now I'm not afraid of you coming in and asking me those questions. I know that you're asking me as a learning partner, so that ultimately what we're trying to do is help our kids become better learners. That it's not really about me anyway. It's about what opportunities am I creating for my students.
Absolutely.
And so I think that having those and being able to have that kind of relationship is really invaluable.
Well, and as administrator, tell me when you're doing those.
Yeah.
I want to come in and see, because oftentimes I'm going to see a lot of positive things. You're going to beat yourself up over all the flaws that you saw.
Right.
Yeah.
Because teachers are really hard on themselves. Well, this didn't work and this didn't work. But I would go and be like, but did you see this worked and this worked? And I would point out the positive things and be like, so it wasn't all bad. But I think, Carl, it goes back to the whole T-test model now.
Yeah.
If you use t-tests, that's a coaching model.
Absolutely.
It's not a gotcha model.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, if we're truly doing t-tests the way it's designed, it's supposed to be a coaching collaboration. You know, let's see how you're doing this. It's supposed to be student-centered, not teacher-centered. And so, how can I support you in that? Tell me, I want to come in and celebrate. You know, I wouldn't say celebrate, but I want to come see it.
Yeah.
And then I would walk out and be like, oh my gosh, that was awesome.
Yeah, that's
Did
good.
you see how the student engagement? Did you see how, you know, so-and-so who's always off task, they were 100% engaged the entire time. You know, like, you get to go in and celebrate those wins with the teachers.
Yeah.
You mentioned something just a little bit earlier about how sometimes this can be a heavy lift. What gets me so excited about the time that we're in right now is for the first time, and I mean forever, we now have tools that can help with that lift. It doesn't replace the lift, but we have AI that can come in and help personalize that learning to those students' needs. I'm excited for what's coming down the road already. You mentioned Magic School. That company is just doing phenomenal things. We've got other ones that are really starting to dip their toe in that, and I think we're just right on the cusp of really seeing personalized learning really integrate with AI and things like that. So I'm excited to hear all that, and I just think, you know, if a teacher is concerned about that lift, there are now mechanisms in place that help reduce that load. And I think that's just
And I'm so glad you said that, because that was actually a conversation I had last week at a conference, was that this will do the lift for you. So instead of spinning our wheels trying to generate the ideas, we can now spend our energy on how can we make this idea come to life. Generate the ideas using AI, and then how do we make this come to life in our actual classrooms? And actually, a great example, yesterday, myself, my assistant superintendent, our reading coordinator, and our testing director, we were all planning. We have an Aspiring Administrator Academy, and so we were planning that. And I was like, hey, there's a great article. I uploaded that into chat. I was like, hey, what would be some good discussion questions? Or give me a scenario like that we could give them to talk about this. And so like I'm prompting, and so it did a lot of the lift for us, and we were like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, I like that question.
Got a new tool for you for that
and
too.
So, I want to hear that. And so, like, you know, let that do the heavy lifting of some of that brainstorming, and then what we talked about, okay, how are we going to make this look? How are we going to deliver this? How are we going to facilitate this? Because what happens often in team collaborations is we spend all of our time talking about ideas, but we never talk about how are we going to make it happen. So then we leave with these beautifully written lesson plans, or these, and AI will write your lesson plans. Well, great. Am I writing those because I'm being compliant, or am I writing those because I really want to be able to go and instruct this well? So now it's going to do the heavy lifting, but it's going to give us the gift of time to now talk about how we're going to make this happen in our classrooms.
And I think it does a key thing too, and you mentioned that there. It will create the things. You are the curator. So you are still absolutely in control. You get to choose. You talked with your team coming together. Y'all looked through a list of things and chose based off of the things you do. Because the thing with AI that we've talked about multiple times, and I'm not trying to make this into another AI session, but the idea that the AI doesn't know context, it doesn't know the school's resources, and it doesn't know your staff. You do. And so you, the user, whether you're a teacher working for your students' benefit or an administrator working for your school's benefit, you know those things, so you can curate. You can look and see. And I think that's a really powerful thing, because sometimes the concern is, oh, well, this is going to do all my creative work for me. And in reality, it's that thought partner that's going to allow for more creativity to happen. And just like you said, not just, oh, well, we have the creative ideas, but we now have time to execute on the creative ideas. And I think you said this so eloquently on that, and that's something that we sometimes struggle with.
Eduate will create a choice board for you.
Absolutely.
Right? It may have 3 great ideas, and it may have 3 terrible ideas.
Right.
Take the 3 you like.
Yeah.
Ask it to regenerate another set of ideas, you know? And so, yes, again, we don't have to just copy and paste it, and I don't think that's responsible usage of AI. I think as responsible users, we have to customize it, and then, again, make it happen.
So, Danielle, we've been talking past, future, all of this stuff. Great conversation. So, just what are the things that are just kind of dear to you, or that you
top of mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And whether it's an initiative or anything like that, just your thoughts on anything.
So, one thing that I often see is a misstep that happens. And I think the larger the district, there's so many people involved, it's definitely hard.
Right.
I think for us in a smaller district, there aren't as many directors.
Mm-hmm.
So we are very closely aligned on what are our central initiatives
Yeah.
as a district.
Yeah.
Everybody has their things that are important to them. And so I think as Director of Innovation, it's my responsibility to really know what are some of our big goals.
Mm-hmm.
And when I send out things for technology, I make sure to incorporate it with those big goals. So it's not one more thing. It's
Right.
here's a tool that can help you
Yeah.
with this
Yeah.
initiative
Yeah.
that's going out in the district. So we're talking the same language. So for example, Fundamental 5.
Mm-hmm.
For our district, we're really talking about Fundamental 5 and power walks, and we're talking about meaningful student purposeful collaboration, and we're talking about critical writing, and we're what different types of assessments and things to do. And so when I push out tech tools, like I'll say, here's a great one for, a critical writing tool. So if you're wanting your kids to critically write, here's, in Google Classroom, ask a question, have them write. Or in Nearpod on the Collaborate board, here's a tool.
Right.
So really helping them see the tools that we have or tools that I'm pushing out, how they align with what our big initiatives are, because teachers are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They really are. The job is really hard. There's constantly new information. And when 6 different or 7 different departments are all pushing their own initiatives, we're not going to do anything really well, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Technology is one of the first things that a lot of people are going to let go because it makes them uncomfortable. So the big thing I have found is if you can integrate your technology or your trainings, whatever, to support whatever district initiatives are happening, it's received. People are more open to receiving
Right.
that. And so when I do trainings, it's not necessarily over a tech tool. I'll take an instructional strategy. Maybe it's meaningful student work or something. I'll bring actual paper pencil. I'll do chart paper, but then I'll say, okay, did you know there's a tech tool for this? And I'll slide it in there. And so again, it's not just always throwing things at people, but what are our big essential initiatives? And then how can I support that in my role?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes because we do get really excited about our new tech stuff. I get really excited. I have figured out people in my district that get really excited too. So I go feed them.
Yeah.
Hey, did you see this new tool? Hey, would you be willing to try this for me? And so you've got to go find people willing to try it that get excited and not overwhelmed by it.
Right.
And then they start spreading the word as well.
Yeah.
But again, I think a big issue is that sometimes people send too much.
Yeah.
And we've got to make sure that we're really honed in on those essential, what are our big goals as a district, and then support those.
I think that's a really wise approach because you're doing it anyway, and you've got to do it anyway. And so it's just saying, hey, here's the way to, whether it's make it more efficient or it just makes sense to you to do it like this or whatever it is. I think that's a really wise approach.
Well, studying our standards is
Yeah.
a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
In our district, we're going to study our standards. Hey, did you know there's this AI tool that will impact the standard for you?
Yeah.
Then you can focus your conversation around that. Or, one of ours for professional learning communities is what are we going to do for students who've already learned it? Hey, when you're answering question 4, have you checked out these tools? And and so then that's how you slide things out, but you connect it to the work they're already doing.
Yeah.
Their plates are overflowing. So we don't want to add more to it. We just want to support what's already on there.
Yeah. I also think that's a really good idea just as a whole district of identifying, hey, these are the 3 or the 4 or the whatever things that we are really going to focus on, because sometimes it seems like initiatives when they come out, it's just like, oh wait, we've also got to do this. And we've not set our matrix or whatever for these are the things that we're doing, and this is how this thing fits in with that initiative. And so we become really scattered and nervous in our and reactionary, absolutely, because it's like, oh, now I've got to do another thing. And if we communicate, well, it already fits in this initiative right here. But sometimes we don't always define what that is, and that I think can be create a problem.
I've done a couple of trainings, one at TAPSA and one at ASCD, and one of them was around maintaining year long. We do really good PD in August, right? And people come back really excited, and then a lot of teachers, nothing's gonna ever come from that, because comes January, what did we ever do with that training from August? And that's where teachers who've been in it a really long time be like, oh, this too will pass. Don't worry, just smile, nod, get through this August PD, and no one's gonna bring it up again. Don't worry about it. So we have a template, and we like talk about that I've shared out with people that it says like, what are our big goals, like, and what's the PD going to look like in August? And then each month, like I have a little thing that helps people like, so how are you going to sustain this? Is this going to be a reminder in a newsletter? Is this going to be just a weekly email? Is this going to be at the faculty meeting? Like, how are we going to bring this back up in August? How are we going to, or in September? How are we going to circle back in October? How are we going to do this in November, December, January? Like, what is this going to actually look like to sustain this and clearly articulate, if we're going to do blended learning in August, what do we want to look for in our classrooms? What should we be hearing in our classrooms? And then reflect each month. Okay, what are we actually seeing and what are we actually hearing? What do we need to do to bring that back around? And so, it's a Google Sheets. It's just a Google Sheets. And, if I was still on a campus, I would make sure my entire campus had access to it. Like, these are our big rocks. These are the things that I'm committed to focusing in on this year. I don't want to add a ton to your plate.
Right.
This is what I'm going to focus in on. And so when I come back from TCEA, super excited and pumped, like, if I'm going to share something out, I'm going to make sure that, like, how does it align to one of our big goals? And if it doesn't yet, then, like, okay, then I'm going to put that in my, like, summer, like, this is going to be something I can help for next year. But we've got to sustain that and maintain that, because if we keep throwing new learning but never circling back. But you're right. We have to clearly articulate it. Our staff has to clearly know what is our big goals, because then we're not going to get their buy-in if it's just going to be like, this too shall pass. And I think it needs to be something that, as an administrative team, as a guiding coalition with your campus, like, you have to come back. How are we doing on this? What are the roadblocks? What do we need to keep going? And having those conversations continuously.
That's really good.
So I'm going to put you on the spot really quick. Can you give us the brief elevator pitch for y'all's podcast, what y'all do, how long y'all been doing it, and all the things?
Which one?
Your principal one.
Perfectly Imperfect
Any of them.
Principal. So our Perfectly Imperfect Principal podcast is myself and a fellow former administrator. She now works as a consultant. And then we kind of have worked with administrators across the nation, and we see common trends. So our goal is, it's usually 15 to 20 minute podcast. We want it to be quick, something people can listen to in the car. And it's about leadership and education and burning topics. And these were things that we failed at. Like, these were things we really messed up on. And here's, like, ways to avoid those same mistakes. Or we have guests on there, administrators, educators, authors, and we just share, here's current reality of things that are going on. Keep going, or here's some ideas, or here's some resources. And so it's really a support for educators and leaders on, it's a hard job. So here are some things to help you with that, because you can't always go to a conference. Conferences are fabulous. Sometimes you need those topics right now. And so that's our goal, is to have topics that people need and they can get it when they need it.
Yes. That's good. That's good. All right. So as we close, and thank you so much for joining us today on the episode, and thank you so much, Danieli, for joining with us. I appreciate the conversation. I love the things that you're talking about, the things that you're doing here in Hallsville. Do you have any just closing thoughts, anything else that you would just want to offer or encourage people with, perhaps?
No, I just try, if you have a new innovative idea, if you have, this big vision, definitely talk to your district staff and see where you can go, get them on board, and then start making baby steps and celebrate the small things. We have a tech challenge I do every month, and last month was our first month that we had several campuses reach 50% participation.
All right.
Right? And so, yes, did we celebrate that? Yes, we did. Because you know what? 50% of the staff on that campus took time to do it. And so you celebrate every little win, because if you don't celebrate the small things, like, you'll never feel like you're accomplishing much. So you've got to celebrate the small wins.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, to reiterate what Carl said, we're so appreciative of you coming on the podcast. We're appreciative of what you do for Hallsville and what you do for our region on there. It sounds like Director of Innovation is not a good enough title to encompass all the great things that you're doing here. I think it should be retitled as Director of Helping Everyone, in some form or fashion. So, but thank you so much for your time on this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great week. Or have a great whatever. I don't know.
Whatever century.
Welcome to the curve, where ideas take flight. Blending tech and teaching, sparking insight. From digital tips to stories untold, we're here to inspire, to break the mold. The learning curve.